What's up YouTube? Eric Vasquez here from Teach Me to Design, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you my complete design process from start to finish for how I go about creating a sports mascot logo design like this one in Adobe Illustrator. So let's get right into it. So the first step is to research, to immerse yourself in the subject matter. In this case, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and create some kind of a panther mascot, so I started researching panthers. And it's so important not to skip this step, because anytime that we're creating, right, we're drawing from things that are already in our own minds, but we have to be continually filling up that creative well to keep generating new ideas. So I'm just looking for inspiration, looking for shapes, looking for interesting poses and angles before I even get started. So once I've spent some time doing that, then I'll jump over and I'll start doing some sketches. All right, so here I've already created a sketch that I'm going to be using for this tutorial. So now that I've done the research, step 2 is to go ahead and sketch. And once I've done that sketch, I'm going to either take a picture of it with my phone or scan it in, any way that you can get it into your computer. So step 3 is really where we are beginning right now in Adobe Illustrator. So what I'm going to do here is create a new document that's 8 inches by 8 inches with one artboard and a color mode of RGB, and then I'll go ahead and click create to make my document. So as I said, because I've already done a sketch, I'm just going to go ahead and open that sketch from my desktop and import it into Adobe Illustrator. So right off the bat, the sketch is going to probably look pretty huge. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, grab my cursor tool here by pressing V on the keyboard, and then just hover your cursor over any of the 4 corners and rotate it while holding the Shift key to rotate by increments of 90 degrees until your sketch is right side up. Here I've only done a few sketches, but I like this one on the bottom right, and I've made a few notes for myself here to maybe add an outline to the whole shape or to maybe rework the mouth or the teeth a little bit. And what I like about sketching is that I can get just enough detail in it where I'm still leaving myself with some room to experiment and explore ideas. And I think that's important. I never really like to be so locked in with a very detailed sketch that I can't explore. So now that I know that I want to work off this sketch, I press M on the keyboard to get my rectangle tool and draw a box around the shape that I want to isolate, or the sketch that I want to isolate. Now, while my box is still selected, I'm going to hold the Shift key, select the sketch behind it, and press Command or Control if you're on a PC, +7 on the keyboard. And you'll see that when I do that, I now just have that thumbnail sketch inside of this box. So let's go ahead and cut it by pressing Command or Control +X, close the window by pressing Command or Control +W, and then I'm going to paste it here in my file. Now again, this is actually much bigger than we need it, so I'm going to scale it down by holding Shift and dragging in from any of the 4 corners while holding the Shift key, and then I can zoom in here and place my sketch. All right, so next, what we're going to do is double click on this layer. And what I like to do is dim the images a little bit. So check off this box that says dim images to 50%. And then I'm going to rename this layer base or reference. Doesn't really matter. And then let's go ahead and lock that layer. Okay. And now that we've done that, we'll create a new layer on top of it. Press P on the keyboard to get the pen tool. And then I just want to press D on the keyboard to reset my default colors. And you'll see over here that I have a white bill and a black stroke. So all I really need is the outline. So I'm going to choose none for the fill and then zoom in. And to get started, we're just going to create the outer shape, right? We're going to create the big shape that everything else is contained inside of. So I'll click here to make my first point just behind the ear. And I'll click around here to make my next point. But before I release the cursor, I am just clicking and dragging the pen tool, and you'll see that that allows me to move the curve and these handles. So I may exaggerate some of these curves a little bit or come back and manipulate them a little bit later on. But now I'm going to release the cursor, and before I click my next point, I want to click on the most recent point that I created. So the second point here, if I click on it, you'll notice that the handles disappear. And that's exactly what we want, because now we have a lot more control over where our subsequent point is going to be placed. So again, I'm going to click here and not release the cursor, but just hold and drag it around so that it follows the curve of my sketch. And then again, I don't want to just try to create my next point, because you'll see what's going to happen. It's making a curve and going in the direction that we don't want it to. So click on that point first, and then I'm going to use the spacebar to get the hand tool and just drag down a little bit. And now I'll go ahead and create my next point down here. So let's zoom out so we can see. And I think here I should be able to get away with just making one point somewhere around there. All right, and again, you can see how far these handles are extending, and we don't want the next point to be all the way over here. That's not going to help us. So again, what I always do is click on my previous point before making my next one. So again, I'm just going to continue this process for the remainder of this portion here while I trace this shape. Okay, and here I'm going to go ahead and create a little bit of a curve. So again, I'm just clicking and dragging. All right, I'll click on that last point here. Do the same thing, click and drag a little bit to get a nice little curve. And here, I think this time I'm actually going to use this curve. So instead of clicking on the last point, I'll click here. And that's going to give me a nice curve there. And then I'll click on my next point somewhere around here and just drag so that I get a nice little curve that kind of follows the natural bend of the chin or the jaw here. All right, and again, I'm going to click somewhere up here. And you'll see that I am taking some creative liberties with this, right? I'm not following exactly, but I'm using it as a guide, a reference. That's really what this is for. All right, and again, let's go ahead and trace around the teeth here, the bottom teeth. Click on that last point, make my next point while clicking and holding so that I can kind of drag around here and see where my handles are. All right, then I'm going to continue to trace here, click again. And I may speed this up just a little bit here now that we kind of know the basic kind of process and workflow that we're doing. But you'll see I'm just going around the entirety of this shape here. And close the shape. And now if I press Shift and X on the keyboard, you'll see that I'm toggling from a stroke color to a fill color. And doing this just allows me to see the whole shape as a silhouette. Okay, so this is really useful. And I'm going to go ahead and click on my selection tool, then double click and change the name of this layer to base. So I'll go ahead and drag this base down here to the new layer icon and create a copy of it. Then I'm just going to lock it and turn it off for a second. And now what I want to do is just work off of this copy, okay? So I'll create another new layer on top of the copy, press Command-Shift-A on the keyboard to deselect everything, and then P on the keyboard once again to get your pen tool. Now let's go in here and start figuring out some of these details. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the nose. And I'm just going to use a similar workflow here where I'm roughly following the sketch. Going around here, click on my previous point, come down here to create that shape. All right, and if at any point you need to, remember the shortcut Shift and X to toggle between a stroke and a fill. All right, and again, I'm just going to continue to follow this shape a little bit, and then let's go ahead and close it. Press Command, Shift, and A to deselect. And now what we can do is press V on the keyboard to get our selection tool. And for the moment, I'm just going to change the fill color of the inside of the eye from black to, let's say, solid white. So that way I can select the area around it and press Shift and X to fill that with black. Now, obviously you can't see the inside of the eye right now because this shape is on top of it. So a good shortcut here is Command or Control and the left bracket on the keyboard. And that's going to move that shape behind the shape just below. So that's going to let us get a better look at the eyeball here. And I'm just going to rotate that eye a little bit as well. All right, and now I'm going to continue to make my way around here and just fill in some of these larger shapes. All right, and again, I don't want a solid white here, but that's very easy to fix. We'll just go ahead and make solid black our fill color here. And that shape doesn't have to be, absolutely perfect either. All right, now you can see that the mouth area is a little bit more complex, so I'm going to save that until I get the jaw here. And what I can do is follow this shape a little bit. And I'm going to try to follow the curve of the base layer. But the nice thing about this is if I mess up or go outside of this area, I can again use the base as a mask. So let me just show you what I mean. Let's say I go outside of these lines a little bit, all over the place. And then on the inside here, I'm going to follow the curve as much as I can. All right, and then we'll just go ahead and close this shape. So obviously we don't want all this extra area here that you'll see spilling outside. So what can we do? Well, we can take a copy of our base here, right? Select that with our selection tool, press Command or Control plus C to copy it, and then come back to the layer above where we're creating all these other shapes and press Command Control F. Now that's going to paste a copy of the base layer on top. Now if I press Shift and X to fill it with a solid color, you'll be able to see where those two areas are intersecting. So this part's really important, right? You want to hold the Shift key, select your full base layer, and then select the shape that you want to sort of adjust, right? That you want to crop a little bit. Now what we're going to do is use the Pathfinder tool, which if you don't see it, it's here under the window menu, down here under Pathfinder. And we're going to click on this option here for divide. Okay, and what that's going to do is just divide those two shapes. So now if I press A to get my direct selection tool, I can actually select this area that spilled outside of the shape and then just delete it. Okay, and now I can go back to my base layer here, or the copy of the base layer, and I can delete that as well. All right, and we still have the copy just below that layer, just like before. So again, it may be a few extra steps, but this is a way to kind of help you clean up your vector illustration as you go. So you don't have to be, so precious about staying in the lines or anything like that. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off here, and I'm just going to change the name of this layer from layer 4 to face. All right. And here what I want to do is start to add some details around the ear. So I want this to kind of come in a little bit. So I'm going to click, drag to create a nice little arc here. All right, and maybe let's zoom in a little bit. And I'll click here on the top of the head and just add that nice little shape here. And if you really want to get precise, you can zoom in, click and drag just to line that up. Or you can click on any of the points and use the handles to refine this curve. All right, but you can also literally just move the point around if you need to. So what I want to do down here is kind of cut into this shape a little bit. So I'm going to create a point right here, click and drag, click on my last point, and then click somewhere below it and create a nice little curve here, and then just close the shape. All right, and that's going to be like a little bit of a shadow here. And again, I'll just manipulate that point a little bit. Do the same thing on the other side here. So I'm going to create a curve, click on my last point here, create another little curve, click on that point, and then we're going to close the shape. Okay, so click on your last point, click and drag without releasing the mouse, and now just go ahead and close that shape as well. So you've got a little bit of a shadow happening here just under the lip area of the panther. All right, do panthers have lips? I don't know if that's the right term, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know if they actually have lips or not. They probably call it something else. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and continue following my sketch here. And just creating some shadow areas here to imply the detail. I mean, the nice thing about doing logos like this is that you don't really need to have a super, super detailed image. You can kind of get away with just implying some details. Now I can select on the mouth here again and just kind of see how things are looking, right? By filling it with black, pressing Shift and X. But before I do that, I'm actually going to select the top and the bottom teeth, and maybe I'll just add that black outline to it, just so I can see a little bit better around the teeth here. So now I'll go ahead and press P on the keyboard to go back to my pen, press X to toggle between my stroke and fill, and choose none for the fill color. And now I'm just going to go ahead and trace the tongue here pretty quickly. I'm just kind of knocking out the areas that I want to be in the shadows. All right, and if I turn my reference back on, you'll see we have pretty much everything we had in our original sketch, except for a little bit of detail here around the ear. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of freehand that a little bit by first adding a little bit of space here behind the head, and I'll deselect everything, and then I'm going to trace the ear, all right, with this black fill color, and just cut into the shape a little bit. Right, just so I can again add some shadow here. And then I'll use my hand tool with the space bar to nav my way up. All right, and then just press Shift X to fill this with solid black. And again, sometimes the points aren't perfect. You do have to kind of go in and move things around, but it's fairly quick and easy to do that. All right, so now we're making some pretty good progress here, and I just want to make sure that things are looking nice and even. So I'm going to add a little bit of black here, just to kind of beef up that shadow. So at this point, what I'd like to do is take my base copy here and select it with my regular selection tool, which is just V on the keyboard. And I want to beef this up a little bit. So how can we do that? Well, what I like to do is go to the object menu up here and go to Path, Offset Path. And let's go ahead and put in a value of maybe like 3 pixels and kind of see how that looks. And then I'll click OK and press Shift and X on the keyboard to, again, go from a stroke to a solid fill color, and then make sure that it's solid black. Now I'll press Command and X to cut that, come down here, just below our base copy layer, create a new layer, press Command F to paste it on top, and now we'll see that we have this black silhouette here. So now what we need to do is lock that layer for a moment, select the base copy, and what I'm going to do is select it and press D on the keyboard, press X to toggle between my fill and stroke, and then choose none for the stroke color. So I just have a solid white fill, okay? So this is now going to be fill color, and the layer below can be our base outline. Now you'll notice there's a few areas here on the outline that we need to fix. So let's go ahead and lock the face, lock the fill color, so that we can just focus on the base outline. So what happened here is a few of these areas aren't coming to a nice point like we want. So I'm just going to use the direct selection tool to come in here and manipulate these points with more precision. Okay, and I'm going to use the handle tool here to just extend that a little bit because I don't want the stroke to be completely uniform all the way around the shape. All right, I want to add a little bit of thickness to some areas while keeping some other areas a little bit more thin. And I think that's one of the nice things here about working in Illustrator this way is that it allows you a lot of flexibility, right? So you can take some liberties with it, and you want to try to have some variety between your thick and thin lines. And that's just going to make it look a little bit more natural and organic. All right, so I'm just going to continue to kind of tweak some of these points in here. I'm actually going to delete that point. It looked like we had an extra point there. And I will just go ahead and close that shape again. That's looking pretty good. All right, now let's unlock the fill color so we can adjust the fill here as well, just so it matches up a little bit better on the ear. Okay, and just want to make sure that the ear is looking nice and smooth. All right, so select that point, use the handle, kind of pull it out a little bit to add some thickness around the ear. All right, just drag that out. All right, and the ear's looking okay. It's looking pretty good here. I think there's just another extra point that we want to get rid of. It actually looks like it's the face detail, so let's unlock that layer. Grab this shadow here and just pull that point up a little bit. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with the way that things are looking, and I'm just going to go ahead and start adding some more details in here. So again, I'll come up to the face layer, and I want to add a little bit of shadow here under the teeth. So I'm going to make a new shape, just kind of follow the teeth a little bit. Press Shift and X to switch to my outline. And just continue to follow this all the way around here. And then Shift and X to close it. Cool. All right, so now what I'm going to do is select all of these shapes together with my selection tool, press Command X on the keyboard to cut it, create a new layer, and press Command F so that I can paste everything onto one layer on top. And at this point, I'll kind of clean up my layers a little bit by getting rid of all those other ones that I don't need. All right, and we now have our main logo on one layer. But remember, we still have this base layer in the back, if we need it, even though we have modified the shape a little bit. So what I'll do is grab all these pieces again, press Command C to copy it, create a new layer, press Command F to paste it on this layer, and then we'll go ahead and fill everything with solid black. Okay, so I'm just going to click on black here. And now what I'll do is once again come to my handy Pathfinder tool, and this time I'm going to use the merge option. And that's just going to create one solid black shape from all of our layers. Right? I have a little straggler down here, some extra points that I don't need. So let's just go ahead and get rid of those. All right, so now I have sort of like a new silhouette here. So I'll call this my silhouette. Move that down one layer, turn this layer back on, and this is our main shape. Now I can take my main silhouette by first locking the main shape, grabbing the main silhouette here with my selection tool, and again, go to the object menu, choose Path, Offset Path, and let's go ahead and make this a little bit thicker. I'll try 4 pixels. All right, and then select OK. All right, and then we'll use the merge option once again on the Pathfinder. That's going to add even more sort of thickness to our logo. Now, another way that you could do this actually is to just select the silhouette and make sure it's filled with solid black. And then you can literally click and drag your fill color onto the stroke to add an outline, and then use your stroke panel to add weight to the outside this way. So now I'll go up to the object menu, choose Expand, make sure that Fill and Stroke are checked off and click OK, and then go to your Pathfinder and choose Merge. Now it's looking pretty good. There's just a little piece down here that I want to get rid of. So how would we fix that if there's a little chunk or a random shape that we don't want? And what I'll do is actually draw a shape around it. Okay, and I'm just going to fill this with solid white by using my eyedropper tool, sampling that color, and just kind of matching up the edges here so that we can clean this up. Okay, and now I'll select that white shape plus the silhouette, and now we'll use merge once again. Now if I use my direct selection tool to select an area that white, I can just delete it, and bam, we have a nice clean shape. Before we go on, make sure you save your work if you haven't already, because I definitely don't want your file to get lost here. I'll call this Panther Mascot logo and just save it on my desktop for now. Now what I'm going to do is create another new layer on top of everything here. So let's just make a little room. Okay, and I'm going to come in here with my pen tool and again just use a solid, or not a solid black, but we'll use a black outline. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some, more shapes to this. So for example, if I come in here around the eye, I'll create a shape here. And this is just going to be like some shadow areas. So what we'll end up doing actually is just filling this with gray maybe. So press X, change the value of this to like AB, 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 and then press Shift X so that you get a fill color here, okay? And now what I'm going to do is continue to add some shapes with this same color, maybe underneath the nose, anywhere where you want shadows. And yeah, that's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is unlock the main shape layer and then rename layer 5 Shadow Pass. Press V to get my selection tool, click all of the gray areas, or you can just select one, go to select, same fill color, and we're going to merge all of these together with our Pathfinder. All right, so now all of our shadows are basically one shape. So now that I have my shadow pass layer, I'll go ahead and select it, press Command X, come to the main shape and press Command F on the keyboard. And now I've got all these shapes on one layer. So if I select some of these shadows, let's say for example here, it's going to select all of them. All right, but what I can do is grab this shadow around the eye, hold Shift and select the inner eye, and then press Command Shift and the right bracket to bring it all the way to the front. I'll select the nose, Command Shift right bracket to bring that to the front. And I'm going to use the direct selection tool here to just manipulate some of these points a little bit. Okay, and I'll do the same thing here. Just kind of matching up some of these shadows. Cool. So I'm liking the way that's looking so far. So now what I'll do is select all the white in my image, press A to get my selection tool. Then I'll go to select, same, fill and stroke. And let's go ahead and fill this with like a sort of desaturated bluish color, just to kind of see what that looks like. Maybe we can make it, yeah, something like that. We'll change the eye back to white. And then for our shadows, I'm actually going to press A to select any of those light gray shapes, go to the select menu and choose same fill color. And then let's go ahead and double click on that. And now I'm going to make it like a darker kind of saturated blue color here. Right, something like that. And now what we can do is also maybe add some highlights. Okay, so we have our main colors here. I'm just going to make a box off to the side, create a copy, just so we can kind of see the palette that we're working with. I'll create another copy here. And now I'm just going to select a lighter, even lighter shade of this blue color. Right, and that's going to serve as our highlight. All right, so let's lock that layer for a second. Go up to our shadow pass layer, which I'll now just use for the highlight for a moment. And I'm going to add a few shapes just on top. And we're also kind of like quickly establishing a color palette. So I'm just kind of doing that as I go. And then I'm going to add a few more shapes here just to add some shadow to the eye. Right, that'll help give it some depth. So instead of filling that with solid white or black, maybe I'll use like a medium gray color. Right, and then we can just do the same thing for the teeth here. All right, and now we've got our color palette, we've got our nice looking logo here. And again, if you want to do anything else to this where maybe you're sampling some color and you want to cut into a few of these shapes here, it's now going to be a lot easier to do that. Right, so I'm just adding this little notch here in the ear, sampling some of the blue color just to build onto that. All right, cool. So once you're happy with the way things are looking, I'm once again just going to grab everything, press Command X, create a new layer, Command F to paste it all onto one layer, and we'll go ahead and call this our Panther logo. Okay, and I'm just going to delete these other layers that we don't need, so we have basically our color palette. Oops. And we no longer really need the base or the reference, but you can take a look at it to see what we started with and where we ended up. Okay, let's get rid of the base. We've got our color palette here. And we now have our logo looking pretty good. So once again, make sure you save your work before you move on. Right, so here at this point, you can just play around, experiment, have some fun with this technique. I'm going to add a little bit more shadow here on the top of the head, just to kind of see how this looks. And like I said, it's really nice because at this point, you can just kind of explore and see what looks the best to you. Right? At this point, we've gone way past where we started with our sketch, and we can now just kind of have some fun with it. We've got our color palette, we've got shadows, we've got highlights. And we're really just adding some details. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way this is looking. Now, really the only thing we need to do to kind of take this to the finish is to add some text. So a lot of times with sports and mascot logos, you'll see they kind of have, the standalone mascot, they'll have the text, and then they'll kind of have like one unified logo that combines the symbol or the head with the text or the word mark. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and select all of this logo here, group it together by pressing Command G, copy it, make sure we have a copy here on our original layer, turn that off, and now we have a whole new layer here that we can just shrink down this panther head. All right, and what's cool is I can also maybe make it a little bit wider, right, just to expand it a little bit. So at this point, I'd like to just add some text here and maybe to make a little bit of a word mark. So let's go ahead and maybe use one of the fonts that we downloaded earlier. I like this font called Moonget from defont.com. And you can customize this font as much as you want. I'm just going to try to do something kind of quick and dirty here. So let's press Command Shift O to convert this to outlines. I'm going to zoom in and add some points to this, right, just to make it look a little bit more custom. And I just want this to line up with the top edge of the letters here. All right, so I'm doing that here. I'll select that shape, press Command C, then Command F to paste it in front. Hold the Shift key and just drag this over to the A. Make another copy here, drag it over to the N. All right, and I don't want to do it on every single letter. Maybe I'll just do it on a few of them, like the R. All right, maybe instead of the A, we'll go with the P, the N, and the H. Right, and that just gives us a nice little bit of a custom look there. So I'll select those three shapes plus my text and then choose Merge from the Pathfinder. And now at this point, what I can do is just kind of play around with the placement of it. So I want to place this layer below the mascot. See how it looks on top. If you want to put it on the top or the bottom, it's totally up to you. This is just me kind of tinkering around with this a little bit to take it to the finish. Right, and this way we get a nice little overlap. Everything feels pretty connected, and it's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to tweak the size a little bit more. Okay, move that up. And there you go. So that's looking pretty cool. I'm just going to call this word mark. Obviously, you could push the text further if you want to. You can really customize it. And I actually did a video recently about 5 ways that you can customize text in Adobe Illustrator. So be sure to check that out if you want some more ideas on how you could push the word mark portion of this logo. So that covers my design process from start to finish anytime I'm creating a sports or mascot logo design in Adobe Illustrator. We started off by looking at how I research, doing some sketches, building this up in Adobe Illustrator, and really taking it even further than we did with our sketch. And then even finding some nice typefaces to help complement the logo, make it feel nice and unified, so that we end up with something like this. So if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and smash that like button. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so that you never miss a video. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Eric Vasquez here for Teach Me to Design, and we'll see you next time.